Emily Thompson isn't a criminal, she's a mother, a good citizen, trapped by a justice system for a minor mistake. But when evidence of Judge Lawson's racial bias is exposed, the bigger question arises: can justice ever win in a system that's rotten to the core? The old courthouse stood tall and imposing on that cold Monday morning. Its marble steps, worn from years of footsteps, led to a fate that would shake an entire city. Emily Thompson, a 35-year-old black mother of three, walked up those steps with her court-appointed lawyer, her hands trembling, but her head held high. Inside courtroom 7B, the air felt heavy and cold. Emily sat straight backed in her chair, wearing her best navy blue dress, the one she usually saved for Sunday church. Her tired eyes showed the strain of 3 months in county jail, waiting for this day. The small bottle of prescription pills found in her car without a label had brought her here, even though she tried to explain they belonged to her elderly mother. Judge Robert Lawson entered the courtroom at exactly 9:00 a.m. Everyone rose as he walked to his bench, his black-robed foe behind him like a dark shadow. At 63, he had served on this bench for 15 years, and his reputation for being strict was well known throughout Jefferson County. What wasn't openly discussed, but widely whispered about, were his unusually harsh sentences for minorities. The prosecutor, a young man named John Reynolds, presented a case that seemed routine: simple possession. No intent to distribute. Similar cases typically resulted in probation or at most a few months in county jail. Reynolds himself appeared uncomfortable as he went through the motions, his voice lacking the usual force he brought to more serious cases. Sarah's public defender, Mark Wilson, did his best with limited time and resources. He spoke about Sarah's clean record, her volunteer work at the local food bank, and her role as the primary caregiver for her 3 children, Lucas 14, Lisa 11, and James 8. He explained how she worked 2 jobs, morning shifts at the local diner and evening work as a cleaning supervisor at the city hospital. Your Honor, Wilson said, his voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. Mrs. Thompson is a pillar of her community. The pills in question were her mother's heart medication. While she should have kept them in their original container, this was a simple mistake, not a crime deserving of harsh punishment. Judge Lawson's face remained stone cold throughout the defense's presentation. His pale blue eyes never showed warmth. As he looked down at Emily from his elevated bench, the few spectators in the courtroom, mostly law students and other people waiting for their cases, could feel something was different about this hearing. When it came time for Emily to speak, she stood with dignity. Your Honor, I know I made a mistake, she said, her voice clear and steady, but my children need me, my mother needs me. I learned my lesson, and I promise you'll never see me in this courtroom again. The judge's response started with a long, uncomfortable silence. He shuffled papers on his desk, removed his glasses, and cleaned them slowly with a white handkerchief. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a chill that made everyone in the courtroom shiver. Mrs. Thompson, he said, emphasizing each word, this court has seen too many excuses, too many promises of reform. The law must be upheld and examples must be made. He paused, putting his glasses back on, taking into consideration the evidence presented and your apparent lack of respect for the law. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. After 25 years, the courtroom erupted in shocked gasps. Sarah's lawyer jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The sentencing guidelines for this fence. Silence. Judge Lawson's gavel crashed down. One more word, Mr. Wilson, and you'll be held in contempt. Faith removed the prisoner. Emily stood frozen, her mind unable to process what had just happened. The Baith approached her, handcuffs ready. As the cult metal closed around her wrists, she finally broke down, her quiet sobs echoing through the stunned courtroom. Even the prosecutor looked shocked, shuffling his papers nervously and avoiding eye contact with everyone. One law students in the gallery frantically wrote notes, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented and deeply wrong. As Emily was led away, her last words echoed through the courtroom, please, someone call my children's school. They're waiting for me to pick them up today. Judge Lawson stood up and left the bench without another word, his robe flowing Behind him, as he disappeared through the door to his chambers, he didn't see the tears streaming down Sarah's face, or the look of disgust on the court reporter's face, or the way the Bath Gentle helped Emily walk clearly uncomfortable with what he had just witnessed outside the courthouse. Dark clouds gathered as if nature itself was responding to the grave injustice that had just occurred within those walls. None of the people leaving the courthouse that morning knew that this verdict would soon set off a chain of events that would shake their city to its very foundation. Mayor James Mitchell sat in his office on the 15th floor of City Hall, reviewing budget proposals for the new community center. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows, casting long shadows across his mahogany desk. At 40, he was one of the youngest mayors in the city's history, and his progressive policies had earned him high approval ratings. His secretary's voice crackled through the intercom, interrupting his concentration. "Mr. Mayor, you need to see. This Channel 7 News is running a breaking story about a sentencing at the courthouse house." James reached for the remote and turned on the wall-mounted TV. His coffee cup crashed to the floor as he saw Sarah's face on the screen. The news ticker at the bottom read, "Local mother sentenced to life for minor drug offense." His hands began to shake. Few people knew that Emily Thompson was actually Emily Mitchell, his wife of 12 years. They had kept their marriage private to protect their children and to allow Emily to live a normal life away from political scrutiny. They lived in different houses during the week, meeting only on weekends at their lake house, where they could be a regular family. "Cancel all my meetings," he ordered through the intercom, his voice struggling to stay steady, "and get me District Attorney Chen on the phone immediately." As he waited for the call, James paced his office, loosening his tie. The careful plan to keep their marriage private now felt like a terrible mistake. He hadn't even known about Sarah's arrest. She must have kept it from him to protect his political career, just as they had agreed years ago. If anything ever happened, the mayor stopped at the window, looking down at the city he governed. Memories flooded his mind: their secret wedding on a quiet beach, the birth of their children, weekend barbecues at the lake house, and quiet nights planning their future. All of it now threatened by one judge's racist decision. His private phone buzzed. A text from Lucas, their oldest son. "Dad, something's happened to Mom. They're saying it's on the news. What's going on?" Before he could reply, District Attorney Lily Chen's call came through. "James," she said, skipping formal greetings, "I just heard this is completely irregular. Lawson has gone too far this time." Lily James's voice was tight with emotion. "I need you to understand something, Emily Thompson. She's my wife." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. "You're what?" Lily finally managed. "How is that possible? We've worked together for 3 years. We kept it private to protect our family," James explained, sinking into his chair. "But now I have to go public. I can't let her spend 25 years in prison for carrying her mother's heart medication in the rum bottle." Lily's legal mind was already working. "This changes everything. Lawson has no idea. He just sentenced the mayor's wife to life in prison. The press will have a field day when they find out. But more importantly, this level of sentencing for a first-time minor offense, James, this could expose years of his discriminatory practices." A knock at the door interrupted them. James's chief of staff, Tom Wilson, entered with a stack of papers. "Sir, we got reporters gathering in the lobby. Someone leaked that you canceled all your meetings after the Thompson sentencing. They're asking questions." James straightened his tie and stood up. In that moment, he wasn't just a worried husband. He was a mayor preparing for battle. "Lily, start reviewing Lawson's past cases. I want every instance of racial bias documented." Tom, call a press conference for 5:00 m. Today. It's time. Everyone knew the truth as his team sprang into action. James opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small photo. It showed him Sarah and their children at the lake house last summer, all smiling, happy and free. He touched Sarah's face in the picture gently. "I'm going to make this right," he whispered. "I promise." The afternoon sun continued to shine through the windows of City Hall, but storm his private practice days before he became a judge. Lily opened the folder and started reading. Her eyes widened as She scanned the documents before becoming a judge. Lawson had represented several organizations known for their discriminatory practices. He had even written legal opinions supporting segregation in private schools. There's more, Tom said, pulling out several newspaper clippings. In 1985, he was part of a law firm that tried to block the construction of a black church in his neighborhood. The case was dismissed, but his name is all over the paperwork. Lily sat back in her chair processing this information. This goes deeper than we thought. It's not just about Emily Thompson's case anymore. This is about 15 years of systematic discrimination. From the bench, she picked up her phone and called Judge Martinez, the head of the Judicial Review Board. Despite the late hour, he answered on the second ring. "John, I'm sorry to call so late, but this can't wait. We have evidence of long-term judicial misconduct by Judge Lawson. I need an emergency hearing." While she talked, Tom continued sorting through files, occasionally passing her sticky notes with important details on her computer screen. A spreadsheet showed the growing list of cases where Lawson's sentences deviated significantly from state guidelines, always harsher for minorities. After hanging up, Lily walked to her office window. The city lights twinkled below, and some out there. Emily Thompson was spending her first night in prison away from her children, all because of one judge's prejudice. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. A young clerk, Jessica Wong, entered carrying another box of files. "Miss Chen, I found these in the basement archives. They're Judge Lawson's cases from his first year on the bench." Lily nodded tiredly, but gratefully put them with the others. "And Jessica, thank you for staying late." As Jessica left, Lily's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Mayor Mitchell to make unprecedented personal statement tomorrow regarding Thompson case. She knew James was taking a huge risk by going public about his marriage to Sarah, but as she looked at the mountains of evidence piling up in her office, she knew it was the right move. This wasn't just about one case anymore. It was about justice itself. Tom appeared at her door again. "Should we go home? It's almost midnight." Lily shook her head, picking up another file. "Not yet. Emily Thompson doesn't get to go home tonight. Neither do all the other people Lawson wrongly sentenced. The least we can do is keep working." She turned back to her desk, determined to build a case that would not only free Sarah, but expose 15 years of judicial corruption. Outside her window, the night grew deeper, but inside her office, the light stayed on, illuminating the path toward justice. Tomorrow would bring Mayor Mitchell's revelation and the media storm that would follow, but tonight, in a quiet office filled with paper trails of injustice, Lily Chen and her team were laying the groundwork for a case that would shake the entire judicial system. The City Hall press room buzzed with energy at 4:45 p.m. Reporters from every local station and major network filled the seats, their cameras ready. None of them knew why Mayor James Mitchell had called this emergency press conference, but rumors were flying about its connection to the shocking Thompson sentencing. James stood behind the stage, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. His chief of staff, Tom Wilson, reviewed the prepared statement with him one last time. The mayor's hand shook slightly as he held the paper. "Thinking about Emily spending her second night in prison. Are you absolutely sure about this?" Tom asked quietly. "Once you make this announcement, there's no going back. Your private life, your children's lives, everything will change." James looked at the wedding ring he now wore openly on his finger, usually kept hidden in his pocket during public appearances. "Sarah's worth it. The truth is worth it." At exactly 5:00 p.m., Mayor Mitchell walked to the podium. Camera flashes lit up the room like lightning. He gripped the sides of the podium, looked directly into the main camera, and began speaking. "Good evening. Today, I stand before you not just as your mayor, but as a husband and father." He paused, his voice growing stronger. "Emily Thompson, who was sentenced to life in prison yesterday by Judge Robert Lawson, is my wife." The room erupted in gas and exclamations. Reporters jumped to their feet, shoving questions. Camera flashes intensified. James raised his hand for silence. "For 12 years we have kept our marriage private to protect our 3 beautiful children and to allow Emily to live a normal life away from politics. That privacy has now become a weapon used against her." He pulled out a family photo from his pocket and held it up. This is our family. Emily is not just. Case number 47,800. Music. Judge Lawson's sentence is not just an attack on my wife, James continued, his voice rising with controlled anger. It is a symptom of a deeper problem in our justice system, a problem of bias and discrimination that has gone unchecked for far too long at the county jail. Inmates and guards gathered around the TV in the common area watching the press conference. In her cell, Emily sat on her bed, tears streaming down her face as she watched her husband risk everything for her back. At City Hall, James revealed the preliminary findings of Lily's investigation. Initial review shows that Judge Lawson has consistently given minority sentences 3 to 4 times longer than those given to white defendants for the same crimes. This ends. Today, reporters scribbled frantically, phones buzzed with breaking news alerts, and social media exploded with the revelation in his chambers. Judge Lawson watched the press conference, his face growing paler with each word. I am calling for an immediate review of all cases presided over by Judge Lawson, James announced, and I am formally requesting that the State Judicial Review Board investigate his fitness to serve on the bench. He then spoke directly to the camera, his voice softening. To our children watching at home, Lucas, Lisa, and James, I'm sorry we had to hide our family for so long, but I'm not sorry for standing up for what's right. Your mother will come home. The questions came like a tsunami. Reporters shouted over each other, cameras clicked, and the room felt electric with energy. James answered each question calmly, revealing more details about their life together, about Sarah's case, and about the investigation into Lawson's past. In homes across the city, people watched their mayor transform from a figure into a husband fighting for his wife. On social media, hashtag Justice for Emily and hashtag Investigate Lawson began trending. As the press conference ended, James walked off the stage knowing his life would never be the same. But as he checked his phone and saw a text message from Lucas, Dad, you were amazing. Mom would be proud. He knew he had made the right choice. The truth was finally out, and like a stone thrown into still water, its ripples would reach far beyond one family, one judge, or one city. The fight for justice was just beginning. The morning after Mayor Mitchell's revelation, veteran reporter Claire Reed sat at her desk at the Daily Chronicle, surrounded by old newspapers and dusty files. Her editor had given her one mission: dig deep into Judge Robert Lawson's past. 20 years as an investigative journalist had taught her that everyone had secrets. Judge Lawson, she would soon discover, had more than most. You won't believe what I just found, said her young assistant Kevin, rushing to her desk with a stack of yellowed papers. They were membership records from an exclusive country club from the 1990s. Judge Lawson's name appeared not just as a member, but as board chairman. During a time when the club openly refused membership to minorities, Claire had adjusted her reading glasses and started typing on her computer. The story was coming together piece by piece, like a dark puzzle. Her phone buzzed constantly with tips from people who had encountered Lawson over the years. A retired courthouse clerk called with stories about Lawson's early days as a judge. He used to make racist jokes in his chambers. The clerk whispered fear still in his voice. After all these years, nobody said anything because he had too much power. By midday, Claire's office wall looked like a detective's investigation. Board photos, newspaper clippings, and sticky notes connected Lawson's past activities with red string. The pattern was clear: decades of discrimination hidden behind a judge's robe. Look at this, Kevin said, pointing to his computer screen. He had found Lawson's college yearbook online. In it, a young Loan posed proudly with a fraternity known for its racist policies. The caption under the photo read, "Keeping Traditions Alive." Claire's biggest breakthrough came when an anonymous email arrived. It contained scanned copies of private letters Lawson had written to various organizations in the 1980s. In one letter, he argued against integrating local schools. In another, he supported policies to keep certain neighborhoods pure. Print East, Claire told Kevin, her hands shaking slightly, and called Judge Lawson's office for comment. They need to know what's coming at the courthouse. Lawson sat in his chambers watching his career crumble. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since Mayor Mitchell's press conference. Now reporters were asking questions about his past. that he had worked hard to keep buried. His secretary knocked on the door. "Sir, the Daily Chronicle is calling. They have some questions about your involvement with the Pine Valley Country Club in 1992. Lawson's face went pale. He remembered those board meetings, the votes to keep people out, the careful wording they used to hide their real reasons. He never thought those records would surface back at the Chronicle. Claire received more documents from other journalists joining the investigation. A reporter in Chicago found cases from Lawson's time as a lawyer, showing a pattern of taking cases that involved defending discriminatory practices. A journalist in Atlanta discovered his connections to organization known for promoting racial segregation. Kevin rushed in again, this time with printouts from social media. People were sharing their own experiences with Lawson. A black law student described how Lawson had questioned her presence in his courtroom, assuming she was a defendant rather than a legal intern. A Hispanic attorney recalled Lawson mocking his accent during a trial. "We're ready to publish," Claire told her editor, laying out the evidence. "This goes beyond Emily Thompson's case. Lawson has been using his power to hurt minorities for decades." The editor reviewed the story carefully. It would take up the entire front page of tomorrow's paper. The headline would read, "Judge is dark pasty, 3 decades of discrimination uncovered." As the story went to print, CLA looked out her office window at the courthouse across the street. Lawson was still inside, probably trying to figure out how to save his reputation, but the truth hidden for so long was finally breaking free. Her phone buzzed one last time that day. It was a text from Emily Thompson's teenage son, Lucas. He had found her number and sent a simple message: "Thank you for telling the truth about the man who took my mom away." Claire wiped a tear from her eye and began packing up her files. Tomorrow, the city would wake up to the full story of Judge Lawson's past. His carefully built image as a respected judge would crumble under the weight of his own prejudices. In her cell, Emily Thompson slept peacefully that night, unaware that the next morning's newspaper would change everything. The truth, like sunlight, was about to disinfect decades of hidden darkness in their city's justice system. The morning after the Daily Chronicle's explosive story about Judge Lawson's past, the streets around the courthouse transformed into a sea of peaceful protesters. People from every neighborhood in the city gathered, holding signs that read "Justice for Emily" and "No room for racist judges." Reverend Marcus Johnson, a respected community leader, stood on the courthouse steps addressing the growing crowd at 65. He had seen many protests, but this one was different. White, black, Hispanic, Asian. People from all backgrounds stood shoulder to shoulder. "Today, we aren't divided by race or wealth." His voice boomed through the megaphone. "We are united by something stronger, our demand for justice." Among the protesters, Lucas Thompson Mitchell, Sarah's 14-year-old son, stood with his siblings and her grandmother. He held a sign showing a family photo with the words, "We need our mom home." News cameras focused on the children, their faces becoming powerful symbols of the injustice. Lisa Chino, local restaurant owner, had closed her business for the day to join the protest. She handed out water bottles and sandwiches to protesters, remembering how Emily used to come to her diner every morning for coffee before work. She always had a kind word for everyone. Lise told a reporter, "Now, it's our turn to stand up for her." Inside City Hall, Mayor James Mitchell watched the gathering crowd from his window. His phone buzzed with messages of support from mayors across the country. Even the governor had called, expressing concern about the situation. "Sir," his assistant interrupted. "Reverend Johnson is here with some community leaders. They have a proposal." The meeting room quickly filled with religious leaders, civil rights activists, and business owners. They presented the United Front, a citywide boycott of the judicial system until Lawson was removed and Sarah's case was reviewed. "Will postpone all non-emergency cases," said attorney Mark Wilson. "Every lawyer who believes in justice will stand with us at the county jail." Emily watched the protests on TV in the common room. Other inmates gathered around her, offering support. Even the guards seemed different today, some quietly expressing their hope that she would get justice back. Outside, the crowd had grown to 1,000 students from local colleges arrived with new energy and creative signs. "Judge Lawson, history will judge you, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," bopped above the crowd. Mrs. Peterson, Sarah's 70-year-old neighbor sat in her wheelchair at the protest holding a simple sign: "She was taking my heart." Medicine, her presence touched hearts and reminded everyone that Sarah's crime was an act of kindness. Social media exploded with support. #JusticeBeforeEmily trended nationwide. Videos of the peaceful protests went viral. Celebrity activists shared the story, bringing national attention to the small city's fight for justice. Local businesses showed support in their own ways. The coffee shop where Emily worked put up a huge "Preserve for Emily" sign on her usual table. The hospital where she worked nights displayed a banner reading "We Stand with Sarah" across its entrance. As evening approached, the protest transformed into a candlelight vigil. Thousands of lights flickered in the growing darkness, each flame representing hope for change. Rabbi John Stern stood with Imam Ahmad Hassan and Reverend Johnson, their united presence sending a powerful message: when justice sleeps. Rabbi Stern said to the crowd, "It's our duty to wake it up." The children started a simple chant that spread through the crowd: "Bring our mother home, bring our mother home." In his home, Judge Lawson watched the news coverage, his hand shaking as he poured another drink. His phone rang constantly, reporters angry, citizens, even old friends distancing themselves from him. The carefully built walls of his prejudiced world were crumbling. Mayor Mitchell ended the day